Yo, what's going on, fam? It's your boy Tahir Johnson, and we're back with another week of the Cannabis Diversity Report. This week, I got my brothers Kevin and Tyrone from Cleveland School of Cannabis in the building. What's up, y'all?
Oh man, what's good, Tyre? How you doing, man?
What's going on?
Yo, definitely appreciate y'all coming through, man. Y'all are doing some great work out here, and I definitely see education as one of the real keys is something that's missing to be able to help more of our folks get in the industry. And y'all have really been tackling that for the past couple of years. So, tell folks a little bit about your business. What do you all do, and how'd you get started?
Yeah, man. As you said, education. So the Cleveland School of Cannabis is a workforce development education company for the cannabis industry. Our goal when we started this thing was to really be able to provide individuals comprehensive education that would really put them in a position to be successful in the industry. Majority of the individuals that have grew the industry over the last decade. Was consolidated on the West Coast because that's where the culture was accepting and allowing it to bud and cultivate, let's say. But the East Coast, the Midwest, the South wasn't having it, right? So we knew that, things were going national and they were coming this way. So in, 2016, when this entire thing started, was like, how do we take a person that knows nothing about cannabis but wants to take advantage of the economic situation, the career, somebody that knows a lot about cannabis, but that hasn't been able to validate their education or get the connections. And that's really what birthed the Cleveland School of Cannabis was say, we're going to provide people the best quality education that we can. We're going to make sure that it's robust. We're going to hold high standards in the sense of how we deliver the education, how we set up the entire systems and the experience for the students. And then we're going to actually work with them and assist them in job placement. We're not just going out and say, come and enroll, into our program and, take these, take this weekend course. We're like, no, you're going to come and enroll. There's a 150-hour educational track program. There's a 300 clock hour education track program. And then through this entire process, you're going to have now a career services department that's going to work with you and work with licensees to help you get where you want to be. We're all about the success of our alumni. So we made sure that we set up our school that way.
Yep. And so how did y'all identify, like I said, it's definitely something important and something you touched on is that a lot of people have these skills and they've been in cannabis for a while. They don't have that actual like certificate or something to validate them. What was it that, with you taking a step back and looking at the industry before that made you identify that this was a problem and something that people needed?
Yeah, man. It was the founder, man. He was involved in the industry in California. And I'll be brief because I'm dealing with public Wi-Fi. uh, he said, "Hey, I've been working in the industry and I've been struggling to find good workers, and this is something that I know we need." And then Kevin, my background was something that added to that. So he had the idea, and we had the skill to put it together. So it came from somebody inside of the industry saying, "I'm struggling finding good employees, and there's something that we can do to kind of change that narrative in the work that's getting put out there."
Right. And so how'd you all end up choosing Cleveland? What was specific about that area that made you want to
Mhm.
base the school there?
Yeah, so for our business partner, Austin and founder, who started, joined him on the journey. It was one thing to get himself back home, being from Cleveland. But truthfully, was, when we think about what the Midwest is, right? The Midwest has been the logistical capital of America for a while, right? There's a reason why they build all the cars. There's a reason why they did that. And it really put us, right in the middle of the expansion that happened in the last 5 years. So if you think about us being in Cleveland, everybody at first like, why Cleveland? But then, Chicago goes, Michigan goes, Pennsylvania goes, New York goes, Missouri goes. You know what I mean? So if you think about that,
Right in the
everything
center
around
of
this,
it.
exactly right in the center of it, everything just went. So you're what, 7 hours from New York. In that situation, when you really think about that, we're at the gateway to the South. As the South continues to go. So, logistically, this has been set up for the last 100 years, and that was a big part of our economic boom in the early 1900s. And the Midwest was a big, crucial part of that. And we knew what was going to happen. Also, the culture wasn't there yet, right? So we wanted to be the stakeholders of help creating and facilitating a culture where cannabis would be not accepted, but truthfully championed. And that's why we took the route of education, not only the market need, but we knew we wanted to raise standards in the sense of how people looked at cannabis. And the only way they can do that is to learn the facts. And that's what we have to deal with every single day, is debunking the propaganda and the misinformation that's been out there about cannabis.
And what's that certification and accreditation process been like? Is it difficult? And is the fact that you're doing education on cannabis, did that make it more difficult to go through?
Man, it's been extremely difficult. The certification process. So we don't like to say certification because we as an industry we haven't yet come together as a collective to start putting out certifications, right? To say this certifies you officially to enter into the cannabis space. So we make sure we decipher that so people understand that the cannabis industry hasn't grabbed hold of the industry in a way that says, you're a master grower because you know these things, and everyone who knows those things are considered a master grower. So that's actually what we're trying to create, is this understanding that there needs to be some baseline education that everyone has, so someone isn't just going to a 3-hour institute and claiming they have the same skill as someone who went to school for 150 hours and who was working, holding the plant, and really getting to understand the industry that way. The accreditation process is a monster. And it has been difficult because it's cannabis, and not just because it's cannabis, but because education is so old and traditional that an industry like the cannabis industry that's coming out and is advancing so quickly, education struggles to keep up. There are these old rules, these old ways of doing work that you have to follow in order to be legitimate in the education space, but it's old and outdated. However, the accreditation process is tremendous because it makes sure that you're doing all of the right things as an educational institution. So it's saying, are you doing what you say you're going to do for the people that you say you're going to do it for? Or are you just coming up with stuff and saying, we're going to do this, but there's no connection for what someone's learning and what they're going to be doing in the field? So accreditation is holding our feet to the fire to say, make sure your school is legit, make sure people are getting jobs, make sure folks have all the resources they need while they're there to be successful. So we've been at it for about 18 months so far, and we have another eight to 12 months to go before we're officially accredited. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and keeping our team, striving to be the best school in the nation. So it's extremely difficult, but it's worth it because you have people paying attention to the educational aspect of the organization.
Right. And like you said, education is like a old system and really like over the past, really, like you said, 18 months. I can imagine as you've been going through this process, the way that people deliver and receive education has really changed a lot. What was it
hmm
like navigating the pandemic, as you guys were really ramping this up? And do you
Yeah.
think that that it actually helped, to spur the business because people are doing some more stuff online, or how did
hmm
it impact you guys overall?
Yeah, I think 100%. When we think about what happened in the pandemic, and I nod kudos, to our team and what we have. And as Ty said, kind of preface earlier, is the fact that him and I had skill set continue to move. And we were sitting down saying, how do we go ahead and make cannabis education in 2019 more engaging, right? Because traditional online school was all pre-recorded, but what we knew at the same time, people wanted to connect with people. People yearn for this. You've been sitting in your house hiding, right? Well, that's how cannabis starts used for most people,
Right.
hiding away from people, being shameful, right? Being the cousin that leaves right before the dinner's coming, everybody's looking at him when he comes back in. So we said we want to facilitate. And the point of why we went brick and mortar first was because we wanted to facilitate you get from going to school, but that's also very important in business and your career, is being able to build relationships with people. So nods to Tyrone. He started to take a look at these platforms and say, well, how do we do this live? And we went out, sought out. He took a look at all the different platforms available, picked Zoom, and I always say this, in 2019, end of 2019. We were
Wow.
already pushing the barrier of what online learning was going to look like. And he had arguments back and forth with our creditors and things of that sort, saying, nah, you can't do it. It's not. Then everybody switches to that. So for us, we were able to switch our entire organization to online learning and not lose personal connection in 3 weeks. We were able to get
Wow.
everything back up and running and to get our students moving forward. So we were prepared for what was going to happen because we were always thinking about, moving forward. And I said, always give the nod to Ty, for the time that he spent really going ahead and saying, how do we make this work? And how do we keep that engagement? And then having that battle with the traditional norms and we push norms, and now this is the norm in the way, in the sense of how we conduct business and how we School of Cannabis, the Harrington Institute, Cannabis Hub is always going to be about how do we push norms, but also continue to set new standards in this industry.
Right. And as you look at the industry, I know you guys probably get a front row seat to a lot of the people that are hopeful that really want to come and get into the industry. What do you see, or like what are some of the careers that people coming in that are looking in or are most interested in right now? What are you guys seeing the most?
I think if we look at our graduates, that probably the highest program outside of our executive program, which is pretty much you get 15 of our 16 class, 12 of our 16 classes. I'm sorry, but the biggest so far has been our horticulture spot. Everyone wants to know how to grow, right? Everyone wants to be involved in that aspect of it. So we're seeing people leave and actually get into facilities and start to grow the plant in one way or another, at least work in cultivation sites. But that's where a lot of the energy is. A lot of people come to us asking, how do we start a business in the cannabis industry? And that's always a difficult question because, as Kevin and I were having a conversation yesterday, my aunt who comes in the game and says, I have $40,000 and I want to start a business in the cannabis industry. It's like, it's a hard pill to swallow when we tell her, Ma, that might work if you open up a restaurant, but in the cannabis industry, you're going to need a little bit more money, and you're probably going to need some history of money in order to get in this industry. So it's really helping those folks navigate the realities of the industry, but keeping their energy and hope alive to where they know that I have a way in the industry. I just may not be able to open up a bed and breakfast with 50 rooms the way I thought because I had $75,000 and someone who was going to invest, and I was going to open up this cannabis thing. It's like it's a little different. So helping people navigate those waters, but still, those waters, but still stay engaged enough to say, hey, I may not be able to do this, but there is an end for me with the skills and the history that I have. It just may not be the ownership piece right away. But horticulture, and then you have folks who are trying to figure out ways to own aspects of the industry. But to Kev's point, and what Kev has been doing is saying, hey, let's go hemp, right? So if you had this idea of getting into the THC side, let's go where the barriers are a little lower, and let's start there. If you're really committed to starting a business in this industry and you don't have the income to do it on the THC side, let's look at some other options for you.
Right. And so what are some of the skills and different things that people like learn when they go through the executive
Mhm.
training program?
Yeah, great question, man. So what we did was we set up educational tracks. So we have our horticulture educational track, and these are all 150 clock hours within them, with 6 classes per each track, right? So we have our horticulture track, we have our extractions track, we have our CBD and hemp track, we have our cannabis research track, and then we have our dispensary operations track. So those are the 5 specific tracks. What we did was we said, well, there's some individuals that want to be able to go ahead and take advantage of all areas of the industry, but also we know that cannabis is going corporate, is going fast, right? And a lot of people, a lot of multi-state operators, right? They have multiple holdings in all layers of the industry. So our executive track combines the core classes of all those tracks to give you a full comprehensive approach to the industry in itself. So you're going to learn about all of those 5 tracks that I talked about in the executive track, and then that accumulates to be 300 clock hours. So that's what we call our executive program, and that we're moving forward, which is spending studying. So, and what we were looking at, with the educational tracks, chance, horticulture is huge now because that's where individuals getting a chance to touch the plant, and that's where everybody wanted to do. But we're knowing that the extraction world is what the future is, right? Just 10 years ago, people weren't talking about dabs like this. They weren't
Right.
talking about even vapes like this. Edibles like this. The whole world has changed. My mom is not gonna go ahead and combust cannabis, but my mom will sure go ahead and eat that cookie. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, right? That's just what it is. She don't even feel like she's taking cannabis, right? It's
Hmm.
opened up so many more people. So I believe it's a future. And talk about entrepreneurship, as our laws continue to normalize, I think extraction cooking with cannabis can be a great opportunity for people to start their own business, with lower barriers to entry. But I really also think it's a great place for Black and brown people to say, well, the industry that we do very well right now, we've been a lot the restaurant game, right, and the food game. How do we go ahead and call that moving and provide multiple options. So if you're already doing your thing, if you're able to go ahead and put cannabis in your wheel well, infuse oils, make products, you not only can help patients, but you can go ahead and start doing private dinners. In Cali, man, that's what's constantly happening, man. The private dinner scene, the private chef scene is blowing up. So as we continue to normalize, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities for people. And as Tyrone, always says, and it's our tagline, education builds nations. So you got to start preparing yourself now for those opportunities. Don't wait till the law changes, right? You want to be at the front door when the law opens up and says, hey, now we're fully normalizing and stuff. Things are really still tight right now, but you don't want to be at the back of the line when that door opens. You want to be a leader at the front. So we really urge everybody to start positioning yourself now, because if you just look at the last 5 years, it's happening. So
Hmm.
the bet is here. It's happening. So see, look how fast we moved in the last 2 years. How many states transition? What the next 5 to 10 years looks like is, what I mean, it's gonna be a very whole new world for us all.
For
Yeah,
sure, man.
yeah.
And I know a lot of your mission is about empowering African American entrepreneurs, and like you said, this is one of the job skills of the future, right? And
Mhm.
that partnership, man, y'all just did with Al Harrington. That's huge. I know that y'all share that similar goal in trying to empower Black folks to sharing the wealth of the industry. Talk a little bit about that partnership, how did it come about, and what are y'all working on?
Man, this is exciting. We should both talk about this. But man, it started two years ago, man, and that's part of keeping your ear to the street and your feet to the pavement, saying let's move. It started 2 years ago. Kevin and I flew out to L.A. and met with Al just to pitch the idea, and he said, yeah, this is pretty dope. But then the world got to moving, right? Last year we circled back and we said it's time to put this together. But the big thing about it was we want to show a connection amongst people of color on a large scale in the industry, right? We wanted to talk about what we were creating. We wanted to show folks that you can do this and you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to operate in silos. So while we may be talking education and ours more so on the growing and the dispensing side of the cannabis industry, we wanted to show folks that we don't have to compete. If we start to come together, kind of like Voltron, if you're an 80s baby, Power Rangers, if you're a 90s baby, same difference. But you wanted to show folks that you can come together and create something massive in order to push this idea forward. So we're trying to create this ecosystem of work, man. And we know we can do it by having someone who's in the industry deep, and then someone who's helping to prepare people like us for the industry to ultimately work for people like Al in the industry. So the partnership came because we had this synergy, right? This communication and conversation where we said, look, we don't got to be competition. You don't got to do something that you haven't done before. You got us to do that. And then we don't have to go out to try to find licenses and create it because you got that. So how do we feed one another and help develop this entire ecosystem where we're working together and we're delivering our people through it?
Hmm. You're on mute, Kev.
Yeah, it's all about synergies and collective impact, and that's what we notice in the sense of his statements and how he's been moving in the industry, how we've been moving in the industry, and the ability that it gives us now with the Harrington Institute is to have a full-fledged focus on equity, and we're not just talking about the buzzword of equity. When you think about equity, you have to think about all of the things that affect an individual to be able to move forward and the history of why they are where they are, right? So it's not just about the education, right? It's about the financial services and the support. It's about the sponsorships that we're providing. It's about providing a la carte classes so people could take a class, this 6 week, and then they could take a break and they could take another class so they can balance within their work-life balance, right? And the structure of being an adult and all those types of things that are going on, right? It's making sure that, we're putting people in leadership that look like individuals so they understand the lived experiences, right? It's about doing it on every single level. And that's what, Tyrone and ourselves have always based ourselves on is integrity. We don't just talk about this space. And the work that Tyrone and I do in the nation, we work with corporations in diversity, equity, inclusion. We work with municipalities, we work with large nonprofits in this
Mhm.
space for the last 10 years. So we're not coming into the cannabis industry saying, hey, we should be doing this. We're like, no, we've been fighting this and developing plan systems and been changing culture for 10 years around this work. So
Right.
we're just taking
Right.
our work now and say, now that we have a system that we're able to go ahead and create, now let's go ahead and put all those 10 years, 10 plus years of work into something that we can go ahead and facilitate. And in the sense of that collective partnership is how we will truthfully get to an equitable place. We're not going to be able to do it alone. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself, man. We're not going to do it yourself, Al, and many others that are in the fight. It's going to be how do we find ways to come together, find partnerships, and even if we can't work directly together, how do we support each other in this process? That's going to be big. Because sometimes, man, you could do it. You could support everything from a like on social media, physically spending your money to basically connecting somebody to other things. And how do we find support? That we do this as a collective, because this pie has not been baked yet. We do not know
Mhm.
the market cap of cannabis. So why would we
Hmm.
compete when there's no market cap yet? It makes no
Uh,
business sense, and it definitely doesn't make sense if we're talking about equity. There's no time to
Hmm.
compete right now. It's all about synergy and coming together and keep growing this thing until we figure out what the market cap is.
yeah,
Exactly. And
man.
I would just add just quickly that we're not here for the fad of diversity, equity, inclusion, and black excellence, right? It's a fad right now, that a stage of coolness that a lot of people are wearing as a badge at look at me. But then when that fad starts to fade, we're going to see who's serious about really doing this work versus who was just doing it because it may have gotten them a new contract, it may have gotten them a
Mhm.
new look, it may have gotten them a few likes. That's something that we don't stand for, and that's not what we're here for. And the way that some folks may be. The other thing is transparency in what we do. So when folks are coming to us, they're used to not being in a space where people are transparent. So when they're asking us about the price of school, faculty are asking about how much they get paid. We're open. We're like, let's have this conversation. We'll tell you all. There's no need for us to hide that, because transparency is something that we as black folks in particular are so used to not having. We're used to people showing us the sleight of hand, hustling us, right? And I'm not talking about people that look like us hustling us, right? I'm talking about other folks hustling us, moving us out of the way, telling us one thing and doing something else. And then finally, we want to show, as Kev alluded, expertise that looks like folks. Because in all of these industries, the experts always are wrapped in white skin. Rarely are they folks that look like us. So when we step in front of people as experts, they look at us with a side eye. So we want to put faculty in front of people that look like them. So they say, you know what? Our folks know what they're talking about. And I love learning from them because, one, it empowers me to be better in the classroom, right? Because I can connect with you and I can talk with you. But for two, it tells me that I can be an expert too. And I should have confidence in myself and I'm not an imposter to the industry. So those things are critical to how we're moving right now.
Yo, man, that's such a good point. And people being able to see themselves like in success and that excellence, man, makes all the difference in the world. And that's been like one of the major things that I've tried to move with since I've been in the industry too. And like you said, that point in like we have to take it on ourselves to be able to educate. We have to take it on ourselves to be able to share. So it's definitely dope again to see y'all that y'all actually embodying all those things and it being core to the mission of the school and everything.
Definitely, I appreciate you, man. We appreciate, man. We appreciate the work you're doing in the industry as well, man. I remember, first telling Ty about you, I was like, man, I've been watching this dude for a while.
Yeah.
And just again, how you move with integrity, no matter what, organization that you might be representing at that point. I mean, you never swayed. You know what I mean? And that's what we see too many times when the fad of caring about black and brown lives is in the mainstream.
Oh yeah, nah, this is
Right
in our
now.
mix, right? We've got to
Yeah,
live and breathe this, man. You can't not something you
exactly,
can turn on and off, man.
exactly, right.
Mhm. One thing I would be interested to hear because I'm like I said again, I'm always preaching the same in that people need to take the job skills that they have and that can be a great avenue to transition into cannabis. And so y'all, I'd love to hear the story about your entrepreneurial journey getting to where y'all are doing the business. What type of industries were you all, in before this?
Definitely, man. So myself was always kind of in the marketing realm, and business realm, and then and I'll let Tyrone speak. Ty came from education, but we started a firm called Face International Marketing, Advertising, and Development. Um, 11 years ago, where we decided to couple together skill sets. So it was a couple of us and our boys, and we said, okay, well, we have marketing skill set, we have diversity and training skill set, and then we knew that the world was changing in sense of the digital age, right? So we brought that all together, right? We always say that it's kind of the real life boomerang, an all black firm, you know what I mean, and things of that sort. And the funny thing, Ty always brings up the some of the reviews from that movie was that this is unrealistic to have an all black firm, right? And I said, that level. And we say every day to that to that critic, right, is that it's a reality, in the sense of that, right? So when we started that, and our competitive advantage was that diversity piece, right? There wasn't marketing firms. I still don't know anyone, a marketing firm that's going to come in to do strategies for you and be able to create all the content, implement the strategies, right? And then also be able to develop your staff interpersonally. So we can work with your staff on team development, diversity work, leadership development, all this type of cultural stuff, right? Us to work with, again, government agencies, nonprofits, big business, small business, I mean, all these different things, I mean, we always laugh about an event that we were promoting, and then they had a camel there, and then camel's milk was the big thing. Like, so we've done everything from camel's milk to, ingrain ourselves in the community, where we, as a marketing firm, profit company, was doing, backpack giveaways, food giveaways, Mother's Day cookout, Father's Day cookout, being ingrained in our community because we were authentic, you know what I mean? And we wanted to make sure, in a sense, as we were company, that our community never felt that we were disconnected from them. We were always going to be willing to go ahead and walk with our community at the end of the day. And what it keeps us really solid, because you understand the individuals that are closest, to the pain and what we're trying to do in our overall goals. If we get too disconnected, we're unable to see clearly. So, when the education side came on, obviously, for me, the marketing stuff kicks in. But that's really for Ty, where he was really able to
Yeah.
kick in his years of working in higher education, his degree and understanding how to run those systems. We were able to basically just do what we've always done for the last 11 years, kind of look at it, divide that thing up, and say, hey, you get this, I get that, I'll meet you in the middle, when we get this thing going. So we, it's funny, people, a lot of times we won't see each other, and people think, oh, we're not, maybe not fully communicating. I'm like, nah, man, we're always in the same path because we know our goal, and we've just been able to fall into our skill set, man. So to watch, what Tyrone has done, and actualize what it looks like to create a higher institution, and then for myself to be able to go ahead and take all the skill sets of how to navigate politicians, big business, the
Hmm.
community, marketing, and then for us to merge that together in one single entity, again, like we did, and we continue to do in Faces International, our marketing firm. It's just a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
and truthfully, it's a blessing, and we don't take that lightly, and that's why we push ourselves to continue to work hard, and put our feet on the ground. And as right now, we're running around, making these moves, because we're never gonna allow this to never come from an authentic place, and we're gonna make sure that no matter who's in our organization is gonna put the work in, because we want to earn this opportunity, and the blessings that have been put upon us. So it's been a real cool journey to see all this stuff happen, and be a part of an industry that, man, sitting on the East Coast just looking at, man, that's a West Coast thing, and I ain't moving out there. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, to be like, yo, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be on the next plane out to LA because we have this stuff going. It's a blessing, and I'm just appreciated to be able to not only do it, but truthfully be able to do it with, an individual that, took a chance on ourselves 11
Yeah.
years ago. So
Yeah.
there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, man, it's funny. We both had two different businesses. I don't even know if we can call them business. We had two hobbies that we were trying to turn into businesses, and we randomly bought a house from across the street from each other, and then met in a cul-de-sac one day and just was having a conversation. But I remember having a conversation with Kev, and I didn't know our businesses one day we would come together, and I just told him, man, I'll meet you at the top because I can already see what you're doing. I can see your grind. I hear your passion. I'll meet you at the top because I knew what I was going to do, and I knew what he was going to do. Years later we came together, and now we're moving to that top together. But
Dope.
the dope thing about it is looking at the cannabis industry. Like Kev said, I came from education, so I was in higher ed for 15 years. And I went to college to be a counselor, and my college program was actually college student personnel, which taught you a lot about the inner workings of a college. So when the cannabis industry came, right, Kev knew marketing, and we got called to do the marketing for the Cleveland Cannabis College at the time. We met a dude on the plane. He said, I need some help marketing this idea. I'm like, that's gonna be Kev's thing. We get to the spot in Cleveland and we look at it, and then my school side kicked in. And I said, this is not a school. And Kev was like, I don't know how I'm going to market this, right? This going to get laughed off the block. So right there, we had to figure out the skills that we had in other industries and how to apply to this in order to make it work. So we always talk about how people can just overlay cannabis over what they do and can come with something magical, right? They already have the skills, they just may not have the cannabis knowledge. So when we put that together with the Cleveland School of Cannabis, you get what you got now. The one thing that I can say is watching Kev navigate marketing as an African American male in the Lehigh Valley where we live, it's extremely artful. So if he can navigate that space to come over to cannabis and figure it out, right? An industry that doesn't allow you to market as aggressively as the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry for several reasons, to kind of figure that out. You see how he just overlaid, cannabis over this navigation of a system that doesn't let black men move the way they really would like to move, and he just applied that to the cannabis industry, and it's flawless, right? You get kicked off of Facebook, you might get kicked off the Instagram, but then he's right back at it trying to figure out, okay, how do I go back to the time where I got kicked out of an office or nobody listened to my marketing idea back in the Valley? How am I going to apply that to this next marketing idea for Cleveland School of Cannabis when Facebook is trying to kick us out from marketing, right? So you find those ways, man, those skills that you have and that you never knew could work in the cannabis industry if you keep your head up and say, this is actually a skill that not everyone can do. Because one thing that we do as black folks is we think everybody can do what we do. No matter how long
Mhm.
we've been doing it, for some reason, we don't ever feel like we're truly an expert. We think the next person can be just as great as us because we don't value what we have and what we do the way we value what other people can do. So when we start to see ourselves as those brilliant people, it's unstoppable. And it takes sometimes somebody else to say, "Bro, I see what you did." Everybody can't do that, right? But you need people that
Mhm.
can spit that in your ear every now and then.
For sure, man. Well, not like I said, to that point, I definitely see what y'all are doing, man. I love the way, like I said, the way that y'all are moving and really educating and making a difference. And y'all made such a good point that even in ancillary businesses and cannabis, having a team and people that can complement you is so important. So like I said, I think y'all coming to having that dynamic together definitely helps lead to success. Before I let y'all go out of here, what type of advice would y'all have for what type of advice do y'all have for brothers and sisters that are out there, saying that they want to get in the cannabis industry? What do you have to say for people like that, whether it's plant touching, ancillary, or anything?
Yeah, man. I think for me, and I'll make sure Todd can end off with this. Um, you got to be willing to learn something new. You got to be willing to traditional norms back. You got to not allow trauma. You got to not allow your frustration to make you give up and say, you know what, they're just not going to let me in. I'm done. If you truthfully want to create something fruitful for yourself, for your family, and change your family generationally, there's some sacrifice that has to be made. And make sure that you are prepared for your opportunities. Take the time to not only heal internally, deal with those traumas, right? Find people that are like-minded, that you can have good, fruitful conversations with. Find a mentor, individuals that you can look up to that can help guide you, through your development process as not only a human being, and a person of color on this planet, but then truthfully a person that wants to attain something more than they have right now, and be willing to go ahead and put the work in. You're going to start in a position and you're not going to know a lot of things, but that's okay. Be willing to be a lifelong learner in this process, right? Especially in this industry. What we thought the industry was and what it was is 20 years ago has changed so much, right? There's so much technology, there's so much enhancement in this process. It's just a different thing. It's a different expectation, even from the consumer side, right? In the sense of how they interact with their cannabis. So I really just urge everybody, be willing to be a lifelong learner. Do not allow your traumas and things that you've been through to hold you back. Even those older people in your family, right? They, you know what I mean? And when we look at our elders in our family, they were adults when the war on drugs was hitting. They were adults, so they felt it harder than we can ever know, right? A lot of us have seen it, touched it a little bit, but they weren't, they were in it. And we have to be willing to have those conversations with them as well, so we can start to get that support within our families and educate them. And that's why education is so important. That's why I love the side that we're on, because education is really going to allow people to overcome some of the roadblocks that are currently in their life, because they'll actually know the facts and then be able to implement those in the future. So just stay aggressive, stay focused. Be willing to go ahead and put in the work in, and just understand that there's no timeline on this thing, right? You just don't know when it's going to happen. Ty and I are 11 years into this thing, and where we've been going, and we've been consistent about it. And that's why we are in the position that we are right now. We all, trust me, we all hope that it happened in year 2, and we all mapped it out and put it on the paper. But that's just not how it works out.
Word up, word up. You hit it on the head, man, with the education. Educate yourself and keep the grind for it. I'll just add, man, get a team. Don't be afraid to have a team, but a team, when you start looking for a team and people that can help you move forward, you gotta be able to humble yourself, and all that stuff you thought you knew, you may not really know. But when you get a good team around you, it's okay because your team is gonna complement your weaknesses to make sure they hold you down where you may be slipping. But we got to be better at getting the team and stopping the competition amongst ourselves. So if I'm giving advice to people entering to the industry, I'm telling you, Tahir doesn't have to be your enemy. That can be a partner. Figure out how you can make that work. That can be a part of your team. That can be an asset. In fact, you can be an asset for him as well, right? The other thing is invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, whether it's time, whether it's a little bit of money. You know what I mean? That money that you were going to spend on a vacation, use a little bit of that to learn a little bit, right? Take a $500 course versus spending 500 on something random, but invest in yourself and watch the fruits, benefit you on the other end. I don't think we do that enough in terms of just saying, I'm gonna actually put this to something that's going to add to my life, in the future, because an investment means there's a little loss right now with the hope that something better is going to come later. And I don't think we do that enough because we want the guarantee, right? Which is usually immediate. I see my transaction, I do it, I get this. But when you're investing, it may not happen right away. And I think we need to do a better job at investing in ourselves. So anybody getting in the industry, do not be afraid to invest, whether it be money, whether it be sitting in a room and just sitting in some silence and thinking, whether it just be writing down your goals. Take some time for you and invest in yourself and watch what happens on the other end.
Man, that's great advice. That is incredible advice. Like you said, it's not instant gratification. It takes a lot of work to get to
Hmm.
where you are, man. And I appreciate y'all brothers for coming through, dropping those gems on folks listening. I think people are really going to get a lot out of this. And folks, man, if you're out there listening, man, make sure y'all hit up csceducation.com and harringtoninstitute.com so that y'all can, man, you need the education. You got to get in the game. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have the basic tools to get started. And I can say that from experience because for me, like getting in and taking all these different cannabis education courses was probably one of the key pieces I was able to get to where I am today. So again, brothers, appreciate all the work you're doing, and I'll see y'all in Vegas, man, next
For
week.
sure. Let's do it. Let's get up, man. Let's have a little good time together and connect, man.
You already know. Well, y'all brothers be easy, and I'll
Yeah, you too.
talk to y'all soon.
All right, boss. Appreciate it, man. Be safe out there.
Yep, peace.